Good evening and welcome to Men's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet. See quite a few people in the chat here. So let's have a quick rundown. Good evening, David, Julian, Taggers. Good to see you. Got Julian, got Stuart, got David Markey, David Barber, two Davids. Gremlins Modeling Mayhem. Gary, welcome. Got John Christmas. Got Pete McDubbs, name I don't recognize. Welcome to the show. Steve T, Adrian Hook. What do we have going down? Lots of people saying hello. Oh, Adrian, that is not good. Don't knack your knees. It's not good. Stuart Craig Dukes. Oh, good. Couple of bits that I've got to do in the background, but whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to introduce one of my guests for this evening. So he will be familiar to many of you. Recently went to Airfix along with Moss, do a bit of a sprue talk. It is Gary from Gary Stuff. Gary, welcome.
Thank you very much, Alex. How you doing, man? You all right?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Kind of enjoying the alternating sun and rain that we see.
It's horrendous. Horrendous. I fear for my tomato plants. I really do.
Oh, I gave up on that years ago. I did it when I had kids, and they enjoyed seeing all the things growing. Even managed to grow courgettes, which I was quite impressed at.
Well done.
Yeah, and then when they get a bit older and they're not really interested, they're kind of interested in the first bit, and then it's all left to you. It's just like, no.
Digging, weeding, that sort of thing. Nah, don't do that. Picking, yes.
Well, you just got a greenhouse full of stuff that you got to look after. It's just like, which is quite nice in some respects, but in other respects, it's like that's a lot of stuff I didn't really plan for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's been keeping you busy then, Gary?
This week, what's been keeping me busy has been the FX Liberator. Just started painting that, which has been quite exciting. There's a Messerschmitt 262 HG3, the amusing hobby one, which is being painted as well at the moment. I'm trying out the Ammo Atom paints for the first time, and I have to say I'm really impressed so far. Very, very nice paints.
They're acrylic, correct?
Yeah. Water-based acrylic. Yeah.
Although that's a bit of a misnomer. I'm doing a video on acrylic at the moment.
Water and several other things based acrylic. Because
there's just such a lot of BS around. So I've got a science background, as you may or may not know. And when I heard the term water-based acrylic, it's just like, like, and like, oh, Tammy, aren't proper acrylics, because it's like, oh god, no, just so much misnomer. But
well, there is some water probably somewhere in the formulation, but there's an awful lot of other things.
Well, and I don't want to spoil my video, but because I can get it all right. Whereas if I say something now, I'll probably mix my metaphors. So we've got John Alec, who will be joining us in a little bit.
Cool.
I'm not sure if James from Scale Modeling Cafe is going to make it tonight. I know that he's doing some night flying around this time.
Cool.
Got a reply from him. So we'll wing it as I always do. But tonight, chaps, I wanted to talk for all those EU in the comments in the chat. I want to talk a little bit about streaming and life on YouTube. And I don't know, do you do much streaming, Gary, or are you mainly long form video?
2 live streams a month currently. First Thursday and third Tuesday of every month, which next month falls on the anniversary of D-Day and the anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo, quite by chance. So there we go. Yeah, and I love doing them. I really like them. It's good fun. The first time you do them, you think, who on earth is going to listen to me rabbit for 2 hours? And it's going, oh my God, what am I going to be able to say? I'm going to run out of things to say in minutes. And then you look at the clock and it's like 9:45. So what just happened? Where did that go? I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. I mean, so I just did what I wanted to do this last week. And one of the things that prevented me, as many will know on the stream who were waiting patiently for me to arrive, and I never did, is we had a whole bunch. We had the internet out completely
Oh, wow.
on Wednesday night. And on Thursday, when I was going to do the finish of my 24 hours of building this beast, the ICM 48 scale Marauder,
Thing of beauty.
it is a thing of beauty. Had the same sort of thing. Lots of little micro breaks in the power. So only like a second or so, just enough to take out everything.
Yeah.
And then you get everything back up and running. And about 15 minutes later, exactly the same thing would happen. And it's just like, it happened like 7 or 8 times in a row.
Oh my God.
I can't like put a live stream on tonight because I can't be
Yeah.
sure that after 15 minutes it's not going to go. So
Yeah.
I had to postpone that. So ironically, or maybe non-ironically, when I was going to talk about the joys of streaming, I couldn't do the joys of streaming because of one of the things about joys of streaming, which is the internet. You are reliant on a live connection.
Yeah, totally.
And with StreamYard as well, what a lot of people don't realize is StreamYard actually requires quite a high PC spec, especially if you're going 1080p, which I do. And if you're having lots of people on, again, it requires quite a bit. So I've got a bit of a, can't say it too loudly because she's downstairs. My girlfriend's laptop is a bit of a potato. I mean, it is like 10 years old, which is fine for doing most, stuff I do at the shop and things.
Yeah.
It can't handle StreamYard. You get all sorts of audio and visual problems. So I can't do that in the man cave because otherwise it means carting out my PC and everything. I really want to leave it in the garage, So yeah, it's just one of those things that we take for granted, the internet, especially with these devices, which of course you don't require Wi-Fi for, but you can't really stream from one of these.
Not terribly well, no.
No, I mean you can do it, but it's not ideal, really.
Yeah.
What kind of setup do you have going?
Most of my stuff, I'm just looking at a Mac laptop at the moment. Most of my streams are done from that, just with the built-in camera to look at me, and then a webcam to look down at the whatever I'm up to on there. And I just use OBS as it's a free broadcasting software.
I tried using OBS and I couldn't get on with it. I use it for recording if I'm doing stuff on the screen and I want to record from that. It's quite good for that. I've tried using it for streaming. I just couldn't get on with it. StreamYard's just very easy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, if you do want to get 1080p, if you want to get second cameras and stuff, then you actually have to pay for it, which I bit the bullet when I actually had money. I paid for a year's subscription, so thankfully now I don't. It's kind of it's sustaining me for a little bit.
Yeah.
Not sure about next year, but we'll see.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a challenge next month in that one of them is going to be the 18th of June one, the Waterloo one. I'm actually going to be in a hotel that night.
Ooh,
so it's going to be fun, making sure that the seeing if the Wi-Fi might hold up to it or not. So we'll see. That's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. See, I've tried to do stuff. I tried to stream live from IPMS Scale Model World in last year, which worked for about 10 minutes before I got in. Actually, it's more like 20 minutes before I got in because I don't know about you, queue was terrible. And then when I got in, it worked for about 4 minutes.
Oh my God.
The connection there is terrible. So big lags, and then it just dropped. So it's just like my plans of being able to show people who couldn't be there, kind of around. No, not a chance. So Just send John the link. Yeah, I think James may be able to make it on.
Cool.
Which is cool. What about YouTube then? Because I mean, you've been on YouTube way longer than I have. I'm a mere whippersnapper in terms of my YouTube chops. It's only been 2 years now. So
it's only 2.5 years for me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Longer.
No, 2.5 years it is. Just towards the end of lockdown, nothing else to do. Started doing some gardening videos, and then my stepson came over to visit one day and saw the sort of rack of planes on the wall and said, "You should make videos about building those. You know, there are people interested in all that." I thought, yeah, whatever, and never made another gardening video again. So there we go. He was right.
Here we go. We have James joining us.
Hey, James, how you doing?
I'm here. I made it finally. Sorry on the drift.
So not flying then at the moment. That would be an interesting stream.
Yeah.
So what's streaming like out of Saudi then?
Well, it depends. So we've been at the new place now for 6 months, and for most of that time we were running on temporary internet. In fact, we still are. We got a temporary put-up tower just around the corner. And every now and again, the diesel runs out for the diesel generator, or we had a really big storm a few weeks ago that knocked it out. So it's not the permanent solution. No idea when that's coming. You ask a question and you just get inshallah back. So we don't know. So I've got a little temporary little box in the corner, and I can get, if it's really quiet and what happens is as people jump on, you get shoved down the list.
Yeah.
And your megabytes goes down and down and down. So what I do is I reset it and then I jump back to the top. And I've had up to sort of 250, what do they call it, megabytes per second or something. But normally I'm about 100, which is pretty good, actually.
That's acceptable. So actually, there's a question up here, which I think was Julian. Here we go. Question: what bandwidth do you think is minimum for streaming? It's a good question. You see, I'm lucky in that the last couple of places I've been in, I've had fiber, so I'm measuring in fractions of a gigabyte per second. So I'm pretty good. So we've got 3 computers. 2 computers, laptop, like smart TV, the couple of, actually, how many phones does Maria have? She's got 2 active phones. I've just got the one. But all of those connected, we've got an Eru net, what do they call it? A mesh, mesh Wi-Fi. And I never have any issues, really, unless the main feed goes down like it did last week, in which case all of that means nothing.
Yeah.
But at work, at the shop, it's only about 15 meg, and that's not enough.
No.
So no. I don't know. What do you want, Gary?
We've got a 1 gigabit fiber line into the house.
Yeah.
Our 2 main desktop computers are hardwired into that line, and the rest, everything else, runs on the Wi-Fi mesh. So this is on the mesh now, and it's, touch wood, it's always fine. It's absolutely no problem. We used to have a 300 megabit line, and that was cool. That worked as well. Just upgraded it because uploading the videos now takes about 15 seconds for a gigabyte of video, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I would say actually, I know some of the guys in our Discord group have slightly lower, and I don't think it's so bad for streaming. I think maybe you can get away with 50, I would say.
That's about what I've got at home in the UK, because we're all Lincolnshire, so we're kind of at the at the arse end of everything.
Well, I mean, it's literal potatoes there. I'm from Lincolnshire myself, so I can diss them as much as I like.
All about
Flatlanders. I don't understand computers.
I live in a place called Thorpe on the Hill. So
I know Thorpe on the Hill.
Oh well, there you go then. So yeah, we are actually on the ridge line there. So,
I'm from Lincoln originally, so
brilliant.
Yeah, and the gap in the Wolds. So
yeah,
I lived at the top of the hill, so I frequently used to have to go down steep hill for drinking with my buddies. And you always walk down because walking back up you can't remember, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, I would say 50, Julian, is probably about that. What I found is, I mean, even with the mesh Wi-Fi here, I still hardwire in both the PCs for streaming. It's just the reliability, and especially if you've got other mobile devices coming in, the way your router prioritizes things, you don't want that to be, suddenly somebody starts watching Game of Thrones in a different room. You don't want it to be shoved down so that your streaming goes into, double digits or something. But actually, I think one of the guys finds that uploading videos to YouTube actually can be more effective by bandwidth, because your upload speeds generally a lot lower, and obviously streaming is uploading, but it's handled slightly differently. So sometimes it doesn't take me. I mean, usually, like Gary, I can upload a video in a few minutes. Even a fairly long one, maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Usually by the time I've entered all of the stuff that I want to, all my tags and cards and all that kind of stuff, it's already telling me that I got a copyright strike, because every single time I get a copyright strike on music and I have to enter, even though I've got a license for it, you still have to, it automatically detects it, and then you have to manually tell it each time, I've got a license, like in the video description, like I tell you every bloody time. So
that's why I just use the music that's free with YouTube, and I don't get any of that.
Yeah, I used to do that, but it's a bit crap.
Yeah.
It's literally the intro and the outro. It's what I'd say less than 30 seconds of music, but it picks it up every single time. For the background, all the way through, I use the YouTube stuff, because otherwise it'd be an absolute nightmare. But how do you find loading videos then, James, from Saudi?
Well, it's not too bad, because what I tend to do is just set it up, let it run, and then I just forget about it, and then I'll come back and look, it's finished. However long later, So I'm not going to set the last one I uploaded, actually, when it was a bit flaky, I ended up having to cancel it, and because it just stopped. And it was really annoying, and that's when I ended up resetting the router, and then after that it was fine. It uploaded with no trouble. So it depends when I jump on and where I am in the list, I guess.
I generally find that if you've got to edit, so for those of you in the chat who don't know how this works, if I get FX and Chill is a good example, right? Because Moss uses Epidemic Sound, I don't use Epidemic Sound. So when I upload, or rather when it's uploaded as a video after the live stream, it automatically says can't be monetized, because you've got these copyrighted sections at the beginning and at the end. And you can take various actions. You can dispute it if you have an Epidemic license, for instance. You can mute it, you can trim it out. I always just trim it, because that's usually the quickest way. Doing that, because it's 2 hours, even though you're only trimming, 30 seconds, a minute at each end, takes forever. It's something about YouTube. And if you try to do other stuff, like if you try to edit a different video's description or change a thumbnail, I've had so many that I've done that and it just hasn't taken, because it's still in the background. The YouTube algorithm is thinking about it, and it's just what shall I do? So I just leave it now and then come back an hour later or whatever. But I don't know. What do you find the biggest time sink in uploading and fiddling about with videos is, Gary?
The biggest thing is just waiting for it to do its checks, its copyright checks. That's the only thing that takes any time. Most of my videos are under a minute to upload. The fiber connection here just uploads at, I don't know, 200-300 megabits per second or something. It's insanely quick upload speeds. By the time I've found the thumbnail to use and put it on, it's probably already uploaded and started checking. Yeah. And that's the thing that takes the time, checking. And then if you want to place adverts in specific places, while it's checking, it doesn't come up with a little thumbnail. So you have to either go back to the video editing software to look at where the breaks you wanted are, rather than let them decide to do it. And then just do it literally by the timestamp and go, okay, I'll put a break there and hope that actually it's where you thought it was. And then it's just waiting for it to say there's no copyright issues. And you thought, well, yeah, I know there's no copyright issues. I know I could have told you that. In fact, I have told you that. Again, I use a service called Upbeat. It's registered that you register your channel with them, so they've got a thing to tell YouTube, yes, that channel is registered with us, don't worry about it, and you put the little link in the information box like you would otherwise for a license as well. And it's never a problem. It just takes time. It just takes a long time. So, but you know, it's not the end of the world. It's not like hours. No. Probably, I'd say about 15 minutes. Or the whole process, maybe 15 minutes. But then I never edit anything on the YouTube app at all, ever. If I need to edit something, I'd do some editing, upload it again, and then get rid of the previous copy of it.
Yeah, the only bits, because, and again, if you don't deal with YouTube, you guys in the comments probably won't know this, but once you've uploaded something to YouTube, you can't edit it. You can, well, that's not strictly true. You can cut pieces out of it. Yep. That's the only thing you can do. It allows you to butcher something. But if, for instance, I put the wrong, and I've noticed I've done this on several videos, like I've got like an intro card, and somewhere along there, because usually I duplicate videos because I've got everything in the background, and then I just change the wording, and I'll miss one. So you'll be looking at an ICM like the more order, and it'll say that it's a Panzerkampfwagen 3 or something. You think, just accept that I'm an idiot and forgot it. Now I could go in and cut that out, but YouTube won't allow you to go and upload an edited version on that same thing. Like Gary says, you have to erase it from existence and put a new one on, which I never do because. And I don't know if it makes any difference, but I don't want to lose the views that I've had on that. I mean, it's partially for my own kind of sanity, because I want to know how well a video topic has done. So if I upload a new one, I would have to manually somewhere write down how many views that one got before the next one, even if, regardless of the algorithm or anything else.
So even if you've deleted it, it doesn't remember it in your stats.
Well, I think for the overall channel stuff it will, but it wouldn't obviously for that video.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if I wanted to do, I've done one of the F-35. What's the best 1/72 scale F-35? Right. There was an issue with the sound the first time I uploaded it, so it was only coming through on one channel, so only the left, I think. Again, don't know why. It was like a DaVinci Resolve thing. So corrected it. Uploaded the new one, but I kept the old one and then just renamed the new one with like corrected sound or something, because it was like a day or something, or day and a half before I got there. And I wanted, for my own, benefit, to know how many total views that got, so that is this worth something, doing something? Because I've also got one a little bit later when the Tamiya one came out. I'll also have one when the Italieri C and the Revell ones come out as well. So just for my own completeness more than anything else, my OCD Excel kind of mind coming into it. But yeah, that's the only reason, rather than anything else. And if somebody's, got a, I don't know how, you see, and again, for all of those of you in the comments, in the chat, we don't have any secrets or like vision into how YouTube works. YouTube just does its stuff.
Yeah.
It's magic. The algorithm that we all like, chase after, or don't chase after, but affects who sees what we do. We don't know how it works. So I don't like taking stuff off, just because if there's some link to it somewhere, if someone's referenced it or something, and you take it off, then that's a dead link. And then how do people find stuff? Not necessarily on YouTube, but on external sites or whatever.
Well, I did a video about we had a visit down to the factory where they're making the FX124 Spitfire over a year ago. Made a video about it, put it up, I think March of last year, and it got up to about 10,000 views and just sort of toddled along. And in the last month, it's had 50,000 views, and I don't know why. Literally, it's done nothing for over a year, and then suddenly in the last month, 50,000 views. And you say, what, how, why, what?
Oh, I live in hope then.
It's just crazy. Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy because there is no rhyme or reason that I think any YouTuber, never mind about any modeling YouTuber, can see in how what makes something successful. My most successful videos have, in some cases, it almost is the less, I don't want to say effort, but it's just like I'll say effort because if I've really worked hard on something, it's almost guaranteed that it's not going to do very well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like inversely proportional to the work you put in. So you can do a good video, which doesn't take very long, and you put it up and it does okay. You can do an okay video that took no time and it does tremendously well. And then you can do a video which actually you think is brilliant, it's the best thing you've ever done, took you ages, you invested money in it, and it flatlines. And it's just like, and you look at the difference between them, you think, I really don't know, other than that one took me 2 weeks, this one took me 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, the one I don't get on mine is, so I think last year, I think it might have been when ICM announced their 2023 releases for the year, and I put a, newsflash, ICM, blah, and it did really well. All the other manufacturers that I did it pretty much exactly the same thing got a quarter of the views, something like that. And then this year, it was a different, I can't remember who it was, I don't know, Edward or someone did like the best out of all the manufacturers release videos I did. It's never the same one. It's never the same time. It just seems to me completely random where one will just be up there and all the others down here. Yeah. It's just odd. I don't know why, they got the same card, picture, thumbnail thing. Random.
Totally.
The manufacturer that usually does the videos usually do really well for me, and I don't know why. It's Revell, and it doesn't matter whether I'm bitching about Revell or I'm just doing what their new releases are. It's just like, and it's really bizarre because you think, well, Revell isn't exactly like the most revered brand. It's probably one of the oldest, but it's it's got a fairly ropey reputation. It's a bit like Airfix's reputation in the 90s. And you think, why are people like looking at Revell rather than ICM or Italeri or Airfix? Or it's just weird.
Was there? Did you look into the geographies of the viewers? Was it like more
my demographics,
or American or German or anything like that?
My demographics tend to be fairly standard. It's about 40% UK, 40% US, and then the rest is mainly Europe, Germany, Spain, Italy, kind of as you would expect. And then the outliers in Japan and Peru and out to Mongolia and everything. So yeah, it's
interesting.
It's kind of not really related to the geography. You just think, and again,
maybe
a lot of those are not necessarily subscribers. So.
Yeah, sorry, maybe these flimsy end opening boxes are more popular than we thought.
Oh my God! When will they change? I mean, should we get started on Revell?
Well, it's
I don't know.
bearing them on 2 hours ahead. So,
Yeah. What time do you have to be up in the morning, James?
well, actually, it's because I've been night flying tonight. It's I don't have to be in until 10 o'clock local. So I get up. Normally it's 6. Normally it's 6 local.
Mhm.
It's 10 o'clock local tomorrow. So thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
So just as a note to everybody in chat, of course, if you do want to ask a question, please put question in nice big capital letters at the beginning. It's difficult to scan through and just find things if you haven't put that. So it just makes it easy to focus down on things. See, a few more people have snuck in while we've been talking. So Matt from Model Minutes has dropped in. Hi, Matt. Reaper55, who says he lives in North Norfolk. Yeah, I'm not even surprised they have the internet in North Norfolk. I've got relatives there. I think they communicate by cowbells. Frank Holder, welcome. Martin Ward, Colin Berry. Sully's popped in. Hi, Sully. Fenris, welcome. I think that's the majority of people I saw come in while we were chatting there. I'm just also looking at things where people have said you can also do this and that on things that we talked about 5 or 10 minutes ago. So Sully says you need to unlist the video and YouTube will keep all the stats. Yeah, the thing is that if you unlist it, and again, it's if you've got it linked for, I don't know, say a day or a day and a half or something, and it's got on something like Facebook, then obviously that link will then go to nothing. And if people have said, oh, there's this, or I found this useful, or check this out or whatever, as you hope people do, the last thing you want is for them to click and it goes to nothing. So that's kind of one of the reasons that I keep mine up, even if they've been updated. And then I try and put in the description, this is the old version, the new, if you've got a problem with audio, the new version is, and then put a link to that. Everybody handles it in their own way. Some people don't like to have multiple videos on which are like that, which I completely get as well, because it kind of looks a bit untidy. I just prefer to keep that there and then direct people to a new one so that we don't have any dead links. So, right, just checking out the more recent chat. Steve T says, if not for streaming on YouTube, I wouldn't be back in the hobby. Just able to really get out. So streams like yours are my lifeline into modeling. Thank you so much. You're more than welcome. And I think we are, I think a lot of us, or a lot of modelers, when they got back into modeling, a lot of it was because they saw something on social media, or somebody mentioned they're interested and they're kind of like, well, how do I get into it? And you look on YouTube, you look on Facebook or wherever, and then you start finding these groups. I think it's a lot easier today than it was 20, 30 years ago, before the internet really took off, to be able to do that. So it's great that you say that it's a good thing. We would hope so.
Yeah, you would really hope so.
But from my own personal side, when I got back into modeling, because it is a very personal hobby, it's a very individual hobby. You can't really do it with somebody. You can't both build the same model. It's not like a jigsaw puzzle in that way. But the social aspect through social media has been greater in the last couple of years for me than I ever really had physically through model clubs. Which again, then kind of prompted some of the questions I asked about, what's the IPMS for and stuff now, because the world isn't what it used to be in the 90s. It has evolved and changed. What about you, James and Gary? What have you found? What's been your sort of biggest, revelation or best thing about sort of streaming, the YouTube, the social media side of things?
I think it's kind of it's almost, I think, back in the day, it was magazines. I think you get your inspiration from magazine articles, and I still I don't get that many magazines, but I get one or two, and I'm about to start getting back into magazine articles. But it's almost like it's sort of like the pictures in Harry Potter where they move on the wall. YouTube's a bit like that. You can see a magazine article effectively in motion in YouTube, and it probably takes the same amount of time to watch that than it does to properly read a proper in-depth article and absorb all the things. But you get so much more from it by actually seeing the process going on, and all those techniques. And you've got the guys like Martin from Night Shift, the absolute top of the game, showing you in detail, and the way he presents an article. I hate people who do that, and I've just done it. On his videos, it's so kind of focused and succinct, and you get the absolute most out of it in a 20-30 minute video. And I think it just kind of draws you in more. That I think a magazine is more sort of dip in and out.
Yeah.
Whereas this format, you can properly watch and absorb, and before you know it, 3 hours has gone because you've gone on some YouTube journey.
Yes.
I think
that's the danger.
And it's just not just modeling. It's skateboarding, squirrels, or whatever. You just go on these journeys, and I don't watch telly now. I watch YouTube and a bit of Netflix or Amazon or something if there's a particular program that pops up. So I just don't watch TV anymore, apart from the weekly disappointment of watching Liverpool. But
that's your own fault.
Well, exactly. But it's just kind of opened up this whole new world, and forums have pretty much gone because the social media sites have replaced forums pretty much. Even though I think forums are a better form, they've kind of been superseded by social media as well. And it just makes you wonder, well, what's next?
Yeah. I think forums, forums got a kind of a bad rap because of toxicity that kind of seeped in. They've kind of now been replaced by Reddit, which is kind of like the ultimate dumpster fire of forums. And it's kind of, everybody knows that though. Well, I think everybody knows it. And it's that keyboard warrior kind of aspect, isn't it? I think about those that people don't like. Whereas I think something like YouTube, you get that you can get that in the comments, but it's moderated by the content owner, so you get less of it, I think. And for the actual content, for the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is, it's not going to be like that. It is just information or entertainment or ASMR or whatever it is that you get from the video. I find that again, doing the stream of this, there are a couple of points early in the build where, even though ICM's instructions are excellent, they're around here somewhere, the state of the art, they have, very nice CAD renders of, you can't really see because of the glare, of the aircraft, all great. Even despite that, there were a couple of points where I'm just like, I'm not really sure how that piece goes on. Or when I tried it didn't quite fit. And then I went to their little QR code to the YouTube video they've got of the 3-dimensional thing coming together. And it's just so much more intuitive. And it's just like, you think that has to be the future of where companies are going. Because all of those bits that didn't quite make sense, that I was a bit confused about, instantly clarified with those. It was just like, and that's what you get, again, hopefully, from our content, right? And other creators' content is, I can talk about, putting graphite on a black machine gun to metal it, and I can show photos of that. It's not the same as actually showing somebody actually doing it, because you're thinking, okay, when you're watching it, you're seeing them, how much pressure they're putting on, how many times they're doing it, what sort of effect comes, how quickly does it take? Because if you're doing it there in isolation, you don't know any of that. If you've never done it before, you don't know, well, should this just instantly look like that? Or do I have to keep going at it? You see somebody doing it, it's just like, right, okay, I understand. That's how it's supposed to go. I may take a few goes to get to that point where it's taking me that amount of time, or, because I'm going to do it carefully the first few times. But for me, it's, it's much more a presentation of reality than the select photos that you inevitably have to take for magazine articles to try and show what you're talking about in text. And there's always that little bit of imagination needed in the eye of the mental eye of the reader to be able to connect those dots. And if they're not thinking exactly the same thing as you, or it's early in the morning and they've got a cup of coffee, not quite finished, there's always that chance to be like, what did he say? What? That doesn't make any sense. What about you, Gary?
Well, biggest thing YouTube has done for me is given me a job, basically. So, I was made redundant like 3 and a bit years ago, and just sort of, what the hell am I going to do now? And then this crops up, and you realise actually with a bit of effort you can make some money in it. And yeah, it's my full time. I work harder on YouTube than I've worked on any other job in my life, I have to say. The number of hours put into it is just crazy, but I love it as well. It's good fun. And
I wish I could make the same hourly rate as I did in my job, though.
Yeah, I worked out the other day. At the moment, I'm on about a 6th or a 7th of the national minimum wage if you actually look hour by hour. But it's just fun. I'm getting paid enough to survive by sticking bits of plastic together. I mean, how crazy is that? And chatting about it, and people actually listen. My dear late mother would have told you your favourite thing is to dress up and show off in front of people. Well, this is YouTube. You put your merch on and you show off in front of people.
You've got a shirt on tonight, look.
There you go. So,
no dressing down tonight. It's a proper shirt.
Good man. But it's great. And also, as you know, as you get more and more into the community of the model making role, you start to get to know the people in the backgrounds, like the people like ICM and like Airfix and people like that. And you get more of an insight into things as well. And there's some things you can share. And then occasionally some things you maybe can't share that you think, oh, that's going to be so cool. And you can get really excited about something that is on the horizon that you aren't allowed to talk about. And maybe you don't know much about it, but it's just like little hints here and there that come out, and that's pretty cool. That sort of buzz keeps you going, and I just love making models, so it's great. I think one thing that I found is that on some kits, if you can follow the instructions, then you'll get to the end and it'll look amazing. But along the way, there could be things that you come to where you think, do you know what? Those bits are not structural. I'm literally never going to see them. Do I need to spend half a day gluing all these bits on, or can I just put the engine cowling on and it's supported at each end? I don't need to build the engine. Why would I build the engine if it's not going to be there? So you can share that with people who maybe don't want to show off an engine and just think they just want the plane. And it's little things like, or largely, if I think I know better than the instructions and I try something and I get it wrong, I'm quite happy to say on my videos, look, I thought I could do this. Trust me, you really cannot do it. They're right. Do it this way. Or if you make this mistake, if you misread this like I just did, then this is how to get yourself out of trouble with it. So it's little things like that. It's sharing, and get so many tips and feedback from other people who have done similar things, or they've found a different way of doing it. And it's brilliant. If it's moderated well, and largely it is, I think it's a really cool community feel to it as well. People are genuinely very helpful, very respectful, very welcoming to new people. And it should be, there's no stupid question in our hobby, because we've all been at these levels. some further back than others, maybe, but there should be no stupid question. So, well, how do I glue this to this? You shouldn't be thinking, oh, come on, for goodness sakes, use your brain. You'll be saying, yeah, actually, I remember the first time I tried that, didn't work either. What you do is this. Everyone's happy that way. And I'm finding that an awful lot, fortunately.
Yeah, I think I found the same thing. I don't know about you, James, but people who subscribe to the channel, people who watch, people who comment on the videos, it's the same as normal society, normal life. It's a little microcosm of that. We have that wonderful bell-shaped curve, and the great majority of people are, normal people. We all have a shared passion, and it varies within all of that. Some people like cars more, some people like military vehicles, some like, whatever, Gundam or aircraft. But we all like sticking bits of plastic together. We all have different ways of doing it. None of them is wrong. There'll always be that fringe, who, just like in real life, are arseholes. There's no other way of putting it.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in a large community, or even, ours is a small community, but it's still a relatively large number of people. Those people, just like in normal society, look like the fringe. And they are. So
Definitely.
I think there is, and that's, I think, where the old kind of where Reddit is now, is it seems to filter out to make that very small vocal minority, look much larger than it is, whereas I think YouTube, modern social media, where you get much more exposure, live streams and things, it's more difficult to do that. It's more difficult to be a troll, when there's a vast majority of people there, with common sense and good reason and good faith, So yeah, I've found everybody enormously supportive. I've learned things in the last couple of years. I've been doing models since, with a couple of extended breaks, I must say, but since I was about 6, so 20 years or so. Okay, a few more years than that. I'll try and slide one through. But you can still learn. You can always still learn in this hobby, and just because you've always done something a certain way doesn't mean it's the right way or even the best way for you. You might just have never found that way before, and then you see it on a video, you hear it from another streamer, you ask a question of somebody and they give you that little extra tidbit, and there you go. Pavel, I just saw that. Of course, eggplanes are excluded. They are not allowed. They don't count as models. So let's just let's just get that out of the way.
That's controversial, wasn't it?
My personal pet peeve. Okay, so eggplanes. If that's what turns you on, that's good. I have no problem with it really. It's just I will never do one. Okay, there'll be a stream in the future, I'm sure. Where I'll end up doing one.
I've done one, but I treated it like a proper kit. So I rescribed it.
James, I just got to work out how to remove you from the stream. Yeah.
But yeah, I scratch building on it. I did a proper weathering job. It was a derelict MiG-15. So I just plugged my phone in.
An abandoned eggplane. How could you?
I know, but I kind of treated it like a serious subject, and I thought I'm gonna treat this like I would any other kit, and I was really pleased how it came out. But you'll be pleased to know when I moved house, it got wrecked in the move. So it
accidentally on purpose.
It's not on the shelf anymore.
So Dave, yeah, I mean, the Dutch do a lot of things which are questionable, but your beers are quite strong, so the fact that you have an annual group build, and yeah, Fenris, come on, you're not going to get me. Dinosaurs, yes. Eggplanes, no. Several people. Why do eggplanes suddenly get all the love? Honestly, so many comments on eggplanes. No more comments on eggplanes. Oh dear. Bacon tanks. toast soldiers. Yeah. There we go. Exactly, Steve. But on a more serious note, I mean, modeling is, as I've said time and time again, it's not for. I'm not the gatekeeper of the hobby. If you want to do eggplanes, go and knock yourself out. If you want to do Gundam, if you want to do Warhammer, whatever it is, it's just like I thought for a long time that actually we could be more open as a community to like the war games community, like the Warhammer, the Bolt Action, and all of those. I think we could learn from some of the techniques that they use, especially figure painters, who are, I think, in general, and I'm massively generalizing, figure painters, I think, generally are a higher level of painter than most modelers, because they have to think about like the way that you're painting figures and vehicles is very different. And the way I say a higher level of painter, that's no disrespect to modelers. It's just that the way you paint a figure is generally looked at. I'm talking about figure painters, not just people who paint armies. Is more the way that artists look at things. You talk about volumetric painting, you're talking about like non-metallic metal, all of these things, which most modelers, if you talked about non-metallic metal, they'd look at you and think like ceramic, not really a thing in most modeling circles. But I think some of those techniques would actually work really well and can be applied to modeling in general. And some of the techniques we use a lot aren't really used. I mean, oil washes are like a relatively new thing in miniature painting circles. How long have we been doing oil washes? I mean, it's like since Moses like parted the Red Sea. So,
well, INVOICE combined their annual show with the local wargaming show. So now it's a big mixy blob of the two. And it's so, I mean, that's my, I left IPMS Avon donkeys years ago when I moved, unfortunately. Fantastic, really big club based out of Bristol. And their show for a one day, I'm a bit biased because it's my old club, but for a one day show in a sports hall kind of setting, it was, right up there with one of the best. And then when they combined it with the wargaming, there was that, rumblings of, oh no, is it going to dilute everything? How is it going to affect the show? But it did exactly the opposite, which is what they were hoping to do. And that cross-pollination now between the two sort of modeling genres has been, nothing but good.
Yeah. I mean, look at railway modelers. I mean, look at the way that they address terrain and stuff. And you think applying a lot of that for a lot of modelers who just do, AFVs or aircraft and stuff, and want to do a small diorama, well, look to your model railway friends, because they will have a whole bunch of, materials and weathering stuff already there, but a lot of experience in, how to create these things easily and not make a lot of mistakes, how to make your static grass stand up, all of that stuff, and they can show you, and I'm sure we'll be more than happy to. They're trying to insist you put a train somewhere, get some tracks. That's just a hazard of the occupation. So yeah, I do think I'm always reminded, whenever people talk about, very focusing in of stuff, and I'm always reminded of it as well at Scale Model World in Telford when they have all the different categories, which are infinitely divided. I always think of the Life of Brian with Monty Python with the People's Popular Front of Judea. It's like, it's just like we're all doing the same thing, trying to split us into very specific things. Yeah, there are SIGs and stuff for those of you who, I'm sure there's an eggplane SIG somewhere, for all of you who want to do that specifically. But at the end of the day, we're all modelers, Fenris is backing me up there. 95% of his diorama techniques from railroad techniques. Yeah.
Well, things like painting pilots or painting vehicle crews or whatever. Painting pilots in 1/72 is not really that much different from painting a soldier at 15 mil. wargaming, and there's guys I watch on YouTube who very rarely make models of anything, but they do a lot of figure painting, a lot of basing, a lot of sort of mini dioramas and micro diorama work, and you think, actually, I can use that. That's a good idea. And a lot of it, I have to say, a lot of really small figure painting is a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of tricks to create the impression of detail when the detail actually isn't there. And once you get to know some of these tricks, you can knock up a pilot figure and people go, wow, that's amazing. That's really incredible. And you think, yeah, just don't look too close because that breaks the magic. Look at proper model viewing distance, and yes, they look amazing. That's how you do it.
Yeah, it's the same as, and this is why I say, they are often looking at them more as artists, because if you look at like fine art, like Renaissance paintings, the Impressionists and stuff, they're creating the illusion of, if you actually go up and look at, the I don't know, the white hair on the woman in the distance, if you really look up, it's a little blob of oil paint. And you think, how can that look like that? But from 3 feet away, it's just like with everything else and with the other colors around, it looks like that woman's hair. And it's just, I always find it fascinating to actually go up and look at, especially some of the later Impressionists like Van Gogh, and the thickness of the paint on the canvas. It's like sticking out like an inch or more. You think it must have taken forever to dry or cure. But yeah, I mean, I think Julian Hall here mentions, figures, they do tend to be smaller. And how many times have you seen a diorama of an AFV, for instance, where the arm piece is fantastic and the figures somehow look wooden and they don't look realistic? Because figure painting is quite a different set of skills than making a vehicle. And again, I watch a lot of videos, again on YouTube, but from people who have nothing to do with modeling, who are figure painters specifically. People like Marco Frassoni, Squidmar, Ninjon, all these people do 40K minis or large busts. There's a company called Chimera Colors that do single pigment colors, which are also excellent, by the way. They have a YouTube channel where they show you the techniques of painting, and of course they're using their colors, but that means they're kind of not brand neutral, but sort of subject neutral, because they're not trying to push a particular figure or brand of figures or whatever. They're obviously trying to shift their paints, but they're showing how to use them. So all of those kinds of things just gives you, I think, anything you can learn and absorb that knowledge, and even if you're not using it directly, there'll come a time when you think, I wonder if I could ... exhausts on jets or hot metal. Games Workshop, what are they? The speed paints, the contrast colors are phenomenal for recreating some of the effects on exhausts, like where you get the yellow, blue, red annealment of the metal, because they're transparent. You can airbrush them. They gradient. They mix very well. You can thin them. All of these kinds of things. They're so simple to create, and yet the effects they create are fantastic. And again, because of YouTube, because of streaming, you can see people do this in real time, rather than thinking, I don't really know where to start with this. Do I just slap it on, or how do I layer them, or what is a filter? All those kinds of questions people ask.
I think also with figure painting, you get things like you start to understand how scale affects the effect of scale on contrast and brightness of color and things like that. How, generally speaking, you have to ramp up the color a little bit the smaller something goes, and also things like creating light and dark in a subject where it's not going to get there just sat on the shelf. You're not going to get the highlights and the shadows in folds of cloth, for example, and how to bring that out, how to sort of pump up the highlight edges and things like that. All of that is second nature to anyone who does sort of uniforms of largish figures or whatever. But if you've got like a 1/32 figure set from a kit and you put it into a diorama, you don't do figures, you wouldn't think of that, and you paint it. And say, well, this is the right color of uniform. Why doesn't it look like this? Well, it's because you've actually got to add these highlights and shadows and subtly and build them up and see how far you can go with them and things like that, which if you're a figure painter. And it's brilliant techniques to learn.
Even if you're doing like Warhammer armies or like bolt action armies and stuff, if you've got like 100, 200 figures to paint, and you need them all painted to what they call tabletop standard, you need to take some shortcuts. You need to, you can't paint each of them like Marco Frazzoni painting his, amazing figures, or, Chimera showing their, we're going to put one of these out every quarter kind of things. You don't have the time, because what they're interested in is getting stuff on the table and playing with it. They're interested in the game. And the assembling and the painting is a vehicle to get to that for them. So they learn a lot of tricks that, again, we can borrow from, refine, and a 1/72 scale figure or a 1/48 scale figure, similar to, as you say, bolt action 15mm or kind of heroic scale. I keep doing this as well. I tend to do it on streaming because I don't know whether people are actually getting the emphasis, because I hate it as well.
Because I never do it in real life.
It's just like if I'm writing, I'll use different emphasis. Obviously, I'll pause and bold or whatever, but I never use the speech marks. But yeah, there's a couple of things I actually got today. Well, no, I didn't get today. I got last week. There's a really interesting thing called color cubes, and they are not for like us really at all. They're not supposed to be for us. So they're these things. They have, if you can see those. So these are meant for people like in interior decoration or art and design websites and stuff to look at colors that aren't necessarily analogous, or they don't necessarily go together. We wouldn't think of, but they do work together. And there's like 100, I think, in each, and there's 2 packs of them. There's a whole bunch of these, and then they have they have shades and highlights of them. They have the hex codes and stuff. And for those in the who are watching and in the comments that know, I scan all of my colors and convert them into LAB figures, so I can quickly find stuff because I'm a nerd. But I thought this would actually be quite an interesting thing. Scanning these, and because you've got the hex codes already, you can see how digitally scanning something alters it, because you want to make sure that what you're getting is an accurate representation. Of course, scanning is an interpretation in the same way that photo is, and it depends on the color sensors and a whole bunch of other stuff. But it's really interesting because if you scan one of these, you won't get the hex codes that come out on here, right, from the digital image. Why? Because you've got way too much light in the scanner, so it tends to wash these out. So you can think about that in the same way as for a model, you're going the opposite way, right? When you shrink something down, it has less light working on it. So you actually go the other way. If you're coloring that, if it was in this yellow, for instance, that is a yellow. No, I'm going the wrong way. There, I'm working backwards. So if it's this yellow and green, for instance, if you color that on a 1/72 scale model, because that's what it was on the actual size aircraft, it'll look way too dark and intense when you get to 1/72 scale, because you don't have the same amount of light reflecting back. So you've got to adjust it. That's why a lot of articles from sort of 90s and stuff talk about scale color, and putting a little bit of gray or white into colors, and that changes with scale. So it's a more intense effect the smaller scale you go. But all of this gets you thinking about color. So that's kind of what that whole thread was. Just the fact that, scanning one of these, you don't get the exact same color. It's a dilution of it, but you can bring it back. And just thinking about how you bring it back can get you thinking about, how color works. And again, all of this is I mean, I find it interesting and fascinating. Other people might think, I just want to paint my model in green, which is also absolutely 100% fine, right? It's horses for courses. What you find interesting about the hobby and what you want to do. I just think it's fantastic that there is a huge wealth of information out there now, and a huge amount of creators and people doing this stuff that you can go and watch to actually see, okay, how does that work then? I'm interested in that. Tell me about color theory. Tell me about acrylic paints. Tell me about, I don't know, the B26 Marauder and its history. That's all. I finished now. I realised I was speaking for a long time there.
Yeah.
Well, I did a degree in imaging science.
Oh, right.
And we had a whole series of stuff on photographic color reproduction. And there's a guy, Robert Hunt, who was like the guru of it at the time. And he always said, you're not trying to reproduce color, you're trying to reproduce the memory of a color. I thought, yeah, actually, yeah. But then when you see all the different steps, like you were saying, you see these worthy articles online saying, this is a picture taken in 1942, and this is therefore the color you have to paint this. And you think, well, even without the quality of the paint and the quality of light under which it is photographed and the quality of the film, how it was processed, how it was stored, how it was subsequently scanned, was it done? What sort of calibration was done on the scanner? But then it was printed, then it's gone into this book, and then you've photographed it from the book and put it on your screen, which is not calibrated either. You've already got about 40 different steps where mistakes come in automatically. They have to, because there's some things you just cannot reproduce in one way from another. It's just physically impossible to do it. And then they're saying, oh, but this is the color crimson that has to go on the prop boss. And you said, well, no, actually, no, it isn't. And even if they say, well, it's in the museum, well, yeah, but the museum's under mercury lighting. That's different to natural daylight. That's certainly different to the LEDs you're using on your table. It's all so subjective. At the end of the day, it's frightening unless you physically have original paint chips. But even then, you have to know how they're stored.
And then they're 60 to 80 years old, and it's just like, how has that paint aged over that time?
Exactly. And you think, really? And added to which I can't mix that color anyway. I've got bottles of it from Vallejo and AK and MIG and all that. I haven't got time for all of this stuff, really. And it just depresses me sometimes. The sort of rabbit holes that people fall down, and you think, mate, just paint the bleeding thing in that color, and it'll look brilliant. And then they're going to weather it anyway. I mean,
I think James and I talked about this a while ago about realism, in models. And for me, it's, a model is an expression of yourself, regardless of what you're trying to do. You're always going to put some of your own techniques and style into it, which is why a constable looks different from a Vermeer. They could paint the same subject, it would look different. There would still be amazing paintings, but stylistically differently. Same as a Van Gogh. Van Gogh is going to be much more impressionistic, in the same way that, again, Night Shift we talked about earlier, has moved away from realism, I'm doing the quotes again, to more stylistic, because that's his choice. That's up to him. And so if you guys want to do that, then you do it. Are you happy with your model? Are you happy with how it looks in the end? Is ultimately the question, isn't it?
I think we forget so often. Sorry, James. I
was just going to say, I never am happy with it. I look at it and I please it, and I go, oh, bugger, I missed that, and that doesn't look right. But it's all part of the learning thing, because I know, well, I'll improve on the next one and the next one and the next one.
I think it's inevitable, though, isn't it? We always see our mistakes.
Yeah. Well, I had the classic. Well, going back to social media and YouTube and blah blah blah, I did the Tamiya F14, and I used the Detail and Wonder undercarriage set. Just phenomenal. 3D printed every little braided hose and connection and everything. It's a beautiful thing. And you get a little metal oleo thing, and you actually build it like the real thing. And I took all the photographs of it, and I was so pleased. And then someone said, "Oh, the bottom half of your nose wheel's cast through 180 degrees. It's the wrong way around." And I looked at it, and I went, "Oh, but luckily, I just and I turned it around." But
Excellent.
did I take all the photos again?
Yeah.
No. But I know the model's correct now. But you know, thank goodness someone pointed out. You know, sometimes you just don't see the wood for the trees, do you?
Well, I mean, funnily enough, so I usually include something in. I don't know why I started this. I usually include something in my models which is deliberately wrong. So just to see if people spot it. And it was the Lightning build I did as a tribute to my dad, because it was his favorite aircraft. I swapped the position of not the position, but the colors of the formation lights. So the red and the green, I just swapped over. And a couple of people mentioned, "Oh, you know, you got those wrong." And I'm just like, "Yeah, I know." Congratulations for finding it.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, I know. I wasn't trying to be like correct in that, but you know, well done for noticing it. You get a little, you know, you get a point on your tick card. But
Well,
yeah,
I did a competition on the channel a year or so back. When I was making the FX B17, I put the two panels right near the nose, but they've got little guns in them. I'd put them on the wrong sides, so when I came to put the nose decals on, they didn't fit. So I had to take them off and put them back again. So I did the video, and then a little while later, so okay, I think so I got to some number of subscribers or whatever. I said, right, here's a giveaway. All you got to do is tell me what I've done wrong, the big mistake I've made on this kit. And the first person who emails it in gets this prize. And you know what? There must have been about 30 different things they mentioned I got wrong on the kit. Not one of them was the one I actually thought
never invite it. Yeah.
Everything else was wrong. Jeez. Never again do that, but hey ho.
Just do the prize as a public burning of your kit. It's just like, right, guys.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Thanks for just destroying my kit.
Oh dear.
Did I
it's
miss
cool. But you know, we got to laugh. That's the whole thing. This is supposed to be fun. We're supposed to be having a laugh with it. And I think you lose sight of that, then you know, either you're doing it because it's being commissioned and you're making a lot of money doing it or whatever. But if you know, if any of us in the hobby are not actually enjoying what we're doing, then you know, maybe we need to revise what our hobby is, because it is supposed to be fun. Yeah. Just build for yourself. There's always a thing. Always say, if you put something on your mantelpiece and you have a visitor and someone comes up and says, "Oh, that's cool. Did you make that?" And you go, "Actually, yes, I did," and you feel proud about it. That's it. Job done. You know, I'd be happy with that.
I must admit, having the stuff in the shop, and especially when, like, you know, it's when kids go by with their mum or their dad, and they stop by and they're looking, and you think, well, that is how you start to inspire like kids, isn't it? They need to see physical things, you know, and think, wow, that's cool. You know, could I have a look at that, Dad? Could I do one? You know, it's all that sort of stuff. If you don't have somebody in your family, I mean, for me, it was my dad. My dad did models, so I saw them all the time, and obviously just followed on from that. But if you don't have that, if you're not exposed to them ever, if you don't see them in a museum, if you don't see them in a shop window, where are you going to see them? You know, I mean, YouTube, I guess, is, you know, a lot of people coming into it at a later stage. You know, and I do get people coming into the shop saying, you know, "Oh, is it okay for you know, I used to do these back in the day. Is it okay for a grown-up to do them?" And it's just like, yeah.
Hell yeah.
You know, like it's like it's some you know, it's age 14 is like the limit. You know, that's the recommended age, is the cutoff point. You can't do it after that. It's
yeah, absolutely. Well, I got back into it because some national newspaper or other was doing a giveaway of the Airfix starter set Spitfire, you know, about 5-6 years ago. My dear wife went down to Smith's and got one and brought it back and said, "Oh, I'll give this to the grandchildren. I got 2 granddaughters, and I thought, you bloody won't, I'm having that. I built it, and that was it. I was off. I was back in the hobby. I'd been recaptured by the plastic, and it's never stopped since, you know.
So Matt here has said that he was called one of the worst modelers on YouTube by someone recently. He said, thanks, according to someone, categorically the worst. So it's nice to know I've improved.
Good man. Good man.
It's funny because Matt has inspired a video that I'm doing at the moment, which is he's done a model of, I won't say what kit it is because I don't think he's released it yet, but it's one that he had done in his youth and he's done again. Obviously, we saw some of the ones, and it got me thinking about some of my old stuff. As I say, I've had 2 breaks from modeling in my life. One after sort of 12 to 13, 14, you know, got into D&D and like drinking and girls and stuff, and you know, didn't come back to it then till after till just before I was married, and then had about a decade before we had children old enough to, you know, take so much time that you can't do modeling anymore. And then broke then until, you know, a couple of years ago. But there are no records of my very first sojourn into modeling, you know, when I was a kid, which is probably for the best. Even the second, what do you call it? Adventure, the return to modeling, the first return. So I guess my modeling history is a trilogy. So the sequel, rather than I guess this will be the final chapter from now till death. But there are some pictures, but I'm old enough that they're all print pictures.
Oh, right.
Physical prints, which I then digitized for the web, you know, because it was around the .com bubble that I had a website and put all this stuff up. But I still have some of those. So that's my return to modeling, and I've got some of those. So I'm doing a video on that and the journey, and you know, I can look back and see the improvements, and I know all the steps, you know, that happened during that time. It is yet to be seen whether I'm going to improve any more from that, or I just hit the plateau back in 2006 or whatever. But what about you, James? What are your records of your earliest models?
I've been racking my brains as you were talking. I don't think I've got any photographs of, you know, teenage modeling. For me, I had the same sojourn, you know, when you get a bit older and hair starts sprouting and you get interested in girls and cars and beer and stuff like that. And but I came back to the hobby. So I joined the Navy. I was a bit old when I joined the Navy. I was 24. And I remember, so I started flying training. I got halfway through the elementary course. And I'd kind of got to the stage in the course where I'd learned everything. Everything that was new in the course I'd learned. And now it was just consolidation and practice. So did a bit of prep in the evenings for the next, you know, couple of trips. But, you know, once we'd had dinner and, you know, a beer, chatted about the day, watched the new episode of Simpsons, it's about 7 o'clock. And you think, well, now what? So I thought, I know. And being, you know, having joined the Fleet Air Arm, it was the Airfix Seafire 47. And I never looked back. And I don't have any of those models, but it was not long after I kind of found that the internet had just started, kind of thing. And it wasn't Google, because Google didn't exist. It was Yahoo. And one of the other students on the junior course said, oh, there's this thing called the interweb or something. So he took me, and there was one computer in the ground school bit. So I went on there and I found Hyperscale on that visit. Yeah. And it couldn't have been going for that long, because this is in the mid 90s, maybe late 90s. And I thought, that's it. So we bought a computer, me and the missus. She was pregnant at the time, our first computer. And I remember the bloke in the shop saying, well, do you want this one? It comes with a built-in modem. And I said, well, what's that? He said, well, it's for the internet. And I thought, do you know what? It's an extra £100 and I'm not sure whether this internet thing's going to really take off, but you never know. All right, we'll have that one then. And that was it. And then I started posting on Hyperscale, and obviously those models are still there. And it's interesting.
You've nowhere to hide.
Well, exactly. And, you know, when I have a rant about pre-shading, for example, I kind of shudder because the photos of those early models. But it was really interesting, actually, because I'm about to finish it. I'll finish it in the next couple of days, the Trump's a Fulmer. And the next one I've got coming up is my second Armour Hobby Hurricane in 48. It's the Sea Hurricane. And I'm going to do it in the white scheme. And one of my early models is the Hasegawa Sea Hurricane on Hyperscale.
Quick pause. How is the Fulmer?
The Fulmer is actually pretty good. It's not their A team. I'd say it's their B team. But okay. I've gone and I've corrected it where I can. So I'm hoping it's going to be quite interesting when I put the videos on YouTube, because I correct the fuselage spine. I've done a lot of scratch building in the observer's cockpit because that's all wrong, sort of down the floor. I've scratch built the left cockpit sidewall. I fixed the machine guns. So I've scratch built some of the undercarriage mechanism. So I've done a lot to that.
It started here and now it's gone like down.
Well, yeah. It sounds like a lot of stuff, but actually it's, you know, the cockpit and spine, it's 2 square. So I've just rounded it off. I printed a couple of panels out on my silhouette cutter, some of the extra proud panels, and I've stuck them on. That worked quite nicely. The sort of observer's cockpit, where it very, very simple. I cut the floor off because they've molded it as if the seat is on the floor and the observer just had a sort of bucket to put his feet in. So I just cut that off, 2 new sidewalls and a floor. The left-hand sidewall's a little bit more complicated, but I just, you know, traced it out with card. So I had a blank canvas and just added the various bits of detail. I've added a spare. I kind of cheated. Not a lot of scratch building. Some of the Edward photo etch, a little bit of bits and bobs. I used a spare Edward throttle, which I kind of adapted to use. So it's a bit of a cheat. Quite a lot of photo etch in the cockpits. But it was, you know, just simple things like just rounding off the fuselage. What is complicated, though, which made me very nervous, is the canopy. You can't have it open, which I only realized after I put all that effort into the cockpit. And I thought, oh, bugger. And the canopy's really thick. It's crystal clear, but it's about 1.5 mil thick. So I actually sanded down the inside of the canopy on the sides to about 0.5 mil. And even that wasn't enough. And then I had to thin the area of the fuselage behind there, and I've scribed in the rails and I've glued in the male part of the rail. So actually it slides open and closed now.
You've answered my question perfectly, James. I'm just going to cross that off the list.
But actually,
sorry, I interrupted you for that. It's just I wanted to ask about the Fulmer before I forgot.
Yeah. But if you built it from the box with the canopy, with the pilot's canopy closed, because that's all you can do from the box, the kind of flat relief doesn't matter. I only knew about the fuselage shape because somebody pointed it out, and then I looked at it and went, oh yeah. And it's not that bad. That's a bit of an easy win. And the other thing is the machine guns, the sort of, they've done them, how can I do it with my fingers? They've done the middle 2 like that, and then the outer 2 higher. So just fill them and re-drill the holes so they're straight. Right. But you don't have to do that. So actually, from the box, it will be a really nice model. It's just sometimes I get the bit between my teeth and go, right, I'm gonna do that. It was
It's
partly for
often
me.
with aircraft you really like as well, isn't it? You know, it's like the film is a lovely aircraft too.
Exactly, and being a sort of a fleet air nut, and having done 7 years out of Yeovilton and going around the museum, obviously they got one in there.
Yeah.
And it's a unique aviation piece because it's the only one in the world. It's a bit of a soft spot, and being an ex-fleet air fighter pilot, it is the aeroplane with the most number of kills. Most people would assume it would be a Seafire or one of the Lend-Lease jobs, but no, it's the Fulmar. Mainly Italian torpedo bombers, so not
you take it where you can.
But exactly, and some of the famous aces in the fleet era in the war sort of cut their teeth on it. So it's one of those underrepresented. You don't have to scratch the historical surface too much to think actually that's a really important aeroplane.
I mean, if you think about the how much the Fulmar did compared to an aircraft like the Whirlwind, which I personally love as an aircraft, but the Whirlwind didn't actually do that much. I mean, it did a lot of rhubarb missions, and it looked nice and stuff. Had some flaws, had some good pedigree. Old Petters went on to design the Nat and various other stuff, but it's hugely represented. Way over. They only made 117 airframes, I think, the Western Whirlwind. So it didn't actually do probably a fifth, 10th as much as the Fulmar.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of representation of the Whirlwind.
Yeah.
And some of it classically wrong, like the Airfix kit, which has a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, I distracted you then from your flow when you were talking about.
Oh yeah, I can't even remember what I was flowing about actually.
You got onto the Hurricane, I think.
Oh yeah, the Hurricane. Oh yeah, of course. So that is the best kit I've ever built, is that Armour Hurricane. And the one I built, which is on the channel, I converted it into the Sea Hurricane using the Airfix Mark 1 parts. Very simple, cut and shut. It all pretty much lines up. So just a little bit of fettling. It's fairly easy. And then I realized I didn't have any decals for the serials, because obviously the Royal Navy used 4-inch serials and they're much smaller.
Yeah.
And I didn't bloody have any. And it's too small for my cutter to do. So I kind of ripped it out and thought, they're going to do a Sea Hurricane because they do it in 72nd, but I don't know when. So I've kept all the parts, and I was going to do it again, and because they've bloody gone and released it already, haven't they? So I thought, well, I've got to go and do that. But I thought it'd be quite nice to do it in the white, because I did it white, the old Hasegawa one back in the day. And in fact, having recently, in the last week, looked at the old hyperscale posting I put on, it's actually my airbrush packed up and I brush painted it. And how I did that, I don't know, because it doesn't look brush painted. Maybe it's the crap photography from 25 years ago.
Well, I must say, I was looking at mine. So I've got an external drive which has my old model web, as I called it, back in the day, which was from about the same time. So I was a member of the, I don't know, there's a scale model ring, it was called, of like different sites. And I think Hyperscale was one of them. But all of the photos that are digitized from that, which I scanned in physically on a scanner, but they're tiny. It's just like they're like, I don't know, 380 by 260 or something. And it's like, because I opened one on the screen and thought, no, I don't want the thumbnail. I went, oh no, that's the actual.
Yeah.
It's like, so I've got to either see if I can find the originals and then rescan them at a decent resolution, or I've just got to enhance them and just say, look, the resolution on these would be garbage because they're like blown up 5 times to get them on 1920 by 1080.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite amusing.
Back in the day, and you'd have to be very choosy with, right, what model am I really interested in? Right, that one. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go and make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I'm going to mow the lawn. I want to get back. I might have 3/4 of an image enough that I can look at that particular model.
I mean, it was all dial-up modem then. I mean, I moved to the Southwest in 2000, and Oscar was 6 months old, so the end of 2000, about November. And my job, I remember being in my office, sitting there thinking, this is great. I'm living in the Southwest. I'm working remotely. I was hybrid even back then. But that was right. Okay, now I've got to download and update my Lotus notes. It's just like, get on my 14.4K. It's just like, oh God, like wait 5 minutes for your emails to download. Oh dear. Yeah. How times have changed. Now we're measuring in gigabytes.
Thank goodness COVID happened now and not 25 years ago.
There'd have been some very, very awful Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
Well, what would it have been? I guess it wouldn't have even been Skype then, would it? It was
no.
Skype.
Conference calls on the telephone.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. And I remember doing conference calls back then, and they weren't great either.
No. No.
Well, interestingly, you said that, I worked for BAE Systems, a high-tech, massive, defense industry. And my interview for this was done on a spider phone dial-in. Although when I walked into HQ in Salisbury, there was a robotic lawnmower thing. That runs, 365. And I thought, oh, that's quite a good sign as I walk into this tech company for my interview. And then it's all, hang on a minute, Well,
the thing is, I mean, people always think about, tech and advanced and defense industry and stuff. The thing is, I think that people don't realize if they've not been exposed to it. Because I used to work for a lot of companies. So I've worked with the likes of AWE at Aldermaston and Kinetic and, all of these BAE and stuff, Royal Ordnance. And the thing is, military stuff has to be hardened and it has to be robust. So it's not like you can get, a mobile phone. And yes, they're doing all that stuff in Ukraine and things and lashing stuff together. But that's not, for a run-of-the-mill, military piece of equipment. It has to survive out in the field, potentially, electromagnetic emissions from nukes and stuff. Big aircraft, strike aircraft have to be hardened against that kind of thing. And you can't just have something that needs to be updated every 10 minutes. You can't. There was a post on Facebook which had, I just wanted some water, and there was a fridge, and it had options for water, crushed ice, or ice, and they were there, and it was like updating Windows 20% on the little screen, and it was like you couldn't get a glass of chilled water because the fridge was updating Windows. It's like, for God's sake. So you can't have that in military hardware. It needs to be robust. You need to be able to get from one piece into another. You need to be able to change these things out. So the technology is, although it might be leading edge, it's going to be bespoke, and it might be using stuff which is like 20 years old because it's robust and it works. And no one's going to put some untested piece of kit in something and have potentially a 200, 300 million piece of kit fail or be grounded because it's been compromised in some way.
Stop in the wrong place in the code or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then the screens go blank.
Yeah, which is why these. There's a lot of milking going on. I mean, a lot of that's coming from defense contractors for zip ties and stuff at like $200 each, and it's like, that is robbery. But that's humans. That's not like the nature of military contractors. It's just people being greedy.
Well, the wedding industry do it, don't they?
Yeah.
You want to hire a hall for a birthday party, it'll cost you £100. For a wedding, it'll cost you £1,000.
Yeah. I mean, any holiday company, looking at, okay, when do the UK have their holidays? It's like July, all the kids go off, so all the prices skyrocket. And I get that it's, supply and demand, but everybody knows that. So just put on more flights, maybe, or, have, hotels and stuff can't have more hotels, but, just play fair. It's
Yeah. Well, that thing about robustness was the same at NASA. Because years and years ago, I did a lot of stuff with them, and they were talking about the shuttle, and they said that it had, when it first launched, it had an iron core memory system. You know, those things with overlapping wires with little chargeable core iron rings on them. And you think, well, I'm running on a 286 computer here, and you're telling me this thing is on iron core memory. And he said, yeah, but it has to be human qualified, which takes time because it can't go wrong. Little did they know. But in those days, they could program the flight computer with launch and orbit insertion and emergency, and that was it. So when they got into orbit, they then had to reprogram the flight computer with on-orbit activities and emergencies, and then to re-enter, reprogram it again from scratch, re-entry and emergencies. And you think, this is a space shuttle, you know, first flew in 86, or no, big accident was 86, 82 first flew. And I remember them going to 286 processors, and we were already on 486s looking at Pentiums. And again, the same thing, you know, we've got 5 million lines of code running through this, and it all has to be double checked, and the hardware has to work. And dude, you do think, you know, space, cutting edge technology, and some of it is, but an awful lot of it really isn't if it's got humans anywhere near it.
Yeah, I used to work a lot with, so I've been in life sciences for most of my career, commercial, but exposed to and working with like the cutting edge research that goes on, you know, around the world. So I used to work with AstraZeneca and Pfizer, and when they were a thing, really, all these companies, which was great because you got to know about like cutting edge treatments that were coming, you know, without actually having to do any of the work, which is even better. But I used to work with both Astra, so when Astra was a separate company, and ICI, which then became Zeneca, and then they merged and became AstraZeneca. That was one of the biggest, like, I don't want to demonetize it, but cluster Fs you've ever seen, simply because neither company would compromise on changing computer systems. Because I think it was, I may have got this wrong, but the gist of it is correct. One of them was on NT. I think it was Zeneca that was, no, Astra I think was on NT, and I think Zeneca was on Windows 98, or something like that. And neither would switch to the other. So they both compromised and went to 2000, which meant so they had to double their work. And it's just like, what? It's just like, just pick one, you know. But no, the board wouldn't do it. You know, that'd be a sign of weakness, that like that they're taking us over rather than a merger. So it's just like, no. So we'll choose a completely new, untried computer system and merge all of our stuff onto that. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, so sometimes it's just you know, that was ego. You know, that was just pure ego. And you just think, yeah, we are our own worst enemies, really. They are.
But it had that with the International Space Station, and all of the NASA designed stuff is in thousandths of inches. It's all in imperial. And of course, the European Space Agency in Canada and Japan all use metric. And so, you know, but these things have got to fit together. Oh, well, you know, we'll work it out. And well, can't you just...
Well, they did it with that Mars lander, did they?
Yeah. NASA by now should be, you know, working everything in metric. You know, no, the engineers always work in imperial. And they worked out how it was going to cost them something like $50 million to change the drawings so that everything was metric. So they just, well, do a conversion. And as you say, you know, there was that Mars mission that famously, you know, the engineers work in imperial, and the celestial navigators work in kilometers.
I would just love to have been there to see the moment on the individual engineer's face when they're just like, okay, we've got this. And then they're all looking at this place and like, something wrong here. And then there must have been a moment where one of them realized, it's just like, oh shit, I didn't do that conversion. Yeah. Just like, you know, you see the one guy who goes red.
Shuffles slightly towards the door.
Yeah, I think we may have an issue here. Why? What? Well, everyone did do the conversions, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh god.
Yeah.
I mean,
The orbit insertion point is 220 what exactly? Kilometers or miles? What was I don't know.
it was kilometers, wasn't it? No, miles. It's just like, oh god.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
Well, at least it's not an expensive mistake, right?
Yeah. 200
So the
million
moral
dollars.
of all of this, after the last 1 hour 40 minutes, is, guys, no matter what mistakes you make in modeling, the most you've got is what, like 100, 150 pounds if you've really gone all in on a big kit. You
Yeah.
know, you're not talking about millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like when you smash a space probe into the surface of Mars at hundreds of meters per second.
Yeah. $200 million that was, that program.
Wow. $200 million.
And also, of course, it was
I could have
the
crashed in for a tenth of the price.
yeah. And it's also the work for like 300 scientists for the next 10 years was just gone.
Well, I mean, they guaranteed the jobs for another 10 years.
Yeah.
Come to again now.
And the boy.
Well, they probably all works in PR trying to offset all the conspiracy theorists saying, haha, we knew that you'd found life from Mars and you were covering it up.
Oh,
and here's another example of how you're covering it up by destroying your satellite. Oh, guys, really no.
And now we have SpaceX who cheer when they destroy rockets. It's like, this is progress?
Yeah.
Okay. So, David, I have put on the little bits, apologies. I completely forget to do this. But yes, so you know who we all are if you don't already. Just looking down. Julian says he wants future-proofed his PC by putting 12 megabytes of RAM. I mean, that's going all out. You obviously there's I can't remember the guy's name, but the equation whereby PC power doubles every.
Oh yeah.
It is. But it's like when you actually get to it in practice, and then you start to see memory, and you think, I'm upgrading my memory here. This is larger than the hard drive I had on my computer when I was doing my PhD. And you think, which was at the time top of the range, But although I do remember it had a 3.5 and a 5.25 inch disk drive.
Whoa.
The 5.25 was the legacy one, and the 3.5 was a new one that enabled you to load MS DOS on the 9 disks that came on, and then Windows on the further 11. And then we got a new one which had a CD-ROM, and you only needed one CD.
Wow.
Blimey.
Those were the days.
Well, I remember the Tornado, the navigator used to load the mission with a C90 tape. Stick it in. But the thing with defense technology, though, you think, the next thing is this. But it takes, a finite time to design it, integrate it, upgrade it. And by the time you've gone through, well, you could have had this. And then you could have had that. So you'll never actually do anything because technology is moving so quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that was their excuse for still having C90 tapes.
Hey, it wasn't a C30 at least.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it did mean that you could play tunes on it, on a transit.
Yeah. Just hope the bugger before us rewound it properly.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Sitting there in the back seat with a pencil.
With a pencil, yeah. The navigator in the back going, let's chewed it again.
There should be a certain level of hell in the same way that, VHS tapes that weren't rewound.
Well, I remember on the Hawk, actually, when we used to go down the range at Pembrey, and it was still the old cine film that you put in the gun sight, and then you'd land, and then they developed the film, and then they put it on a big. You go into the dart room, and they put it on the big, to watch your tape. And then when we went down the range, we had the brand new, the little tapes for your camcorders had just come out. But they modified just a few of the aeroplanes and sent them down to St. Athan, because obviously you're down the range all the time. And we quickly worked out that if the tape chewed up, then that sortie didn't count, and you'd have to go and refly it because they couldn't do the debrief. But we worked out on the way back, if you'd had a bit of a dodgy down the range, because they tell you your score straight away after each pass. And you're flying back going, oh no, that was a nightmare. Oh no. If you went off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, eventually the red light would flash, which meant it chewed the tape. So that was a duty not carried out, and you got to repeat it the next day. I don't think they ever cottoned on.
Well, they have now.
Yeah.
When you get a call tomorrow morning.
Yeah, exactly.
From historical leader. Yeah. Oh dear. Comment here. This is the true joy of streaming live. Conversation bounces around subjects. Well, we certainly do that. I mean, I'm bad enough by myself, but when encouraged by others, well. That's an interesting one. I spent a lot of money on AK period airpoint sets. Could I have just bought cheap acrylics and have mixed and thinned them to achieve the same effect for a fraction of the price? Yes and no. So cheap acrylics, the problem with actually not just cheap acrylics, any acrylics, is most of them have a lot of different pigments in them to achieve the particular shade they have, which means if you mix them, they often don't actually produce the results that you think they might, which is why I have Chimera paints as one of the paints I've got, which I mentioned earlier. They're single pigment paints, so they always behave in exactly the way. So if you mix blue and yellow, they will produce green. You know, a lot of other paints, and especially like the cheaper ones, the pigment density is lower. They'll also incorporate more stuff like zinc or titanium dioxide, a lot of white to kind of bulk out the paint to make it seem like it's got more pigment, or to enhance the luminosity. So it depends. Could you have bought paints and mixed up stuff? Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, I'd encourage that. If you're into painting, into art in general, and thinking about color and stuff, it's a great exercise. It's a long way around. It would take, but it does give you a lot of flexibility. So again, it depends what you want. AK paints are great. The new ones. I've tried some of the, is it the third gen? Second gen, third gen, whatever the new ones are called.
Yeah.
I don't really pay much attention to what the names are, but they're very pigment dense. They work well, they spray well, paint well. I've not had any issues with them. And if you just want a shade, and it's like you don't want to think about anything, ready-made paint is fine, for that. And you can still lighten it, darken it slightly, and that's going to be okay. If you want to mix a completely different color with it to produce a particular shade, you might have more work than you thought. But yeah, horses for courses. Does anybody remember Pascal? Person or code?
I remember Fortran. Used to write in Fortran.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I did basic programming back in the day. That's I could never get the hang of machine code, as it was called way back then. Before it was really cobbled up into different ones. Oh, had a birthday present of going up in a GR4 Tonka. It was scrapped because I had a bleed on the brain and was not a happy bunny. Oh, that's a great shame. I have thought, before I stopped my last consultancy contract, so when I actually had money, my girlfriend found something. She said, I found a great birthday present for you. And I said, I think I've had the same email. And yes, it would be. She said, obviously it's too much money. And I was thinking, well, maybe next year. But flight in a Spitfire, they do the dual seat Spitfire flights. And I think it's only like an extra £500 or something. You can have a Messerschmitt chase plane. Obviously it's the Mule, as it's known. But that would be great, wouldn't it? I imagine we'd all probably be as sick as a dog if we actually went the Spitfire.
Nah. Love it. Absolutely love it. Unfortunately, I have to lose a lot of weight before I could do that. That's my excuse. There are weight limits on these old things. I think you have to be. I think most Spitfires you have to be below 17 stone. And I think the 2-seat Hurricane is even less. I think it's about 15 stone or something like that. So yeah, both of those are off the table for me at the moment. That's my excuse.
You can go in naked, right?
Yeah. Well,
lose those few pounds.
Yeah, that may be a limb, perhaps. But it's achievable. It's achievable if I behave myself. But yeah, one day I'll do it. I'd like to see someone do a Sea Fury and have one of those whizzing around doing rides. I'd be in like one of those like a shot.
I did see. Again, this was back in, I guess, the late 90s, early noughties. There were a lot of, not a lot of, but a relative lot of like old Soviet bloc jets, like MiG-21s and stuff, like MiG-21 things, doing supersonic flights. And you think, yeah, I'd love to do that if it wasn't an ex-Soviet bloc jet, which, it's just like, the chances of it landing in one piece with me alive, it's like, I'm not sure. Not sure about that.
Fairly small.
Oh dear.
There's such a project. So if I weren't doing this all the time for work, which is like messing up my personal project builds considerably, I want to build a model of everything I've flown in one of everything. So airliners, small planes, fast jet, everything I've ever flown. I'd like to do one of each. That would be quite a cool trip down memory lane, I think.
Yeah, I've never done that.
If I did that, it'd be a very boring lineup of planes. just like a lot of. I mean, I suppose the Embraer, the little Embraer twin engine things are quite cool, but otherwise it's just every commercial airliner you can think of, which is like, not my thing.
No.
So the old BBC Acorn computer.
Oh yeah.
If you've any interest in any of this sort of old computing stuff, I watched a documentary on the BBC Model B. Again, that was one of those YouTube rabbit holes I had no intention of, and I kind of got hopped onto it through several different videos. I didn't think it would actually be interesting at all. It was fascinating. It was designed in an incredibly short amount of time. It was amazing. Go ahead and look at it if you're interested in that sort of thing. Try and find it. It's about 45 minutes, I think, the documentary, but it talks about exactly how it was made, and it's incredible. And it was an amazing machine for its time. A-level computing, 10,000 lines of BBC Basic. That's a lot of Basic. You see, when I was a kid, we used to buy computer magazines, which had programs in them.
That's right.
Type them in. I remember my sister used to sit next to me and read it out, and I would type it in, and we'd go all the way through, because then you got to play the game at the end. Of course, you didn't, because what actually happened at the end is you'd have to debug like the 300 lines of text that you put in. But the idea of being able to just like write in your own game was fantastic. Good evening, Matt. Have a good one. Just looking through the chat, because I'm a little bit behind. I once spent 2 days coding a game of Basic on an old Acorn, only to have my tape deck go. So I couldn't save it. Left it switched on for weeks. See, this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize as well. I was thinking about it the other day. I can't remember why. But old games, it's like, computers, when you switch them off, that was it. There was no like long-term access, there was no hard drives. It was if you had a tape or a floppy drive attached, you would save to that. I mean, that's what you used to do with the old Spectrum games and stuff, isn't it? You get a tape, save your game on that. Hope you hadn't like gone over Ultravox or something. This has nothing to do with modeling.
No.
We've now become a computing podcast. Wow. still have a working BBC Model B.
Hmm.
With a device that's pretty impressive. Probably be worth quite a bit of money now. TRS 80. Oh my god.
My God, thanks.
I don't think that was good at the time, was it?
Yeah.
Wasn't it one of those computers that you could buy in catalogs? You know, like Burton's that also sold like women's clothes and cars. And my mum had some Burton's magazine, I think it was, or Burton's catalogue, and Burlington's was one of them. I remember. That's a very 1970s, 1980s name, isn't it? First computer Spectrum ZX81. Yeah, I remember going into W.H. Smith's as a child with my friend, and he wrote a short program. I think it was on it's probably Spectrum rather than the ZX81, basically to draw a pair of boobs, and then we just pressed go and then ran away. My misspent youth.
Yeah.
I mean, just to to make the screen pink and draw a couple of circles with some pseudo nipples on. But I'll probably get you cancelled now, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Probably go into some sort of correctional facility.
You're on a register, mate.
Do you know? Funny enough, I miss 8-bit. Is my son, right? Who is a millennial. He was born in 2000. Loves 8-bit games. Or 8-bit gaming, which aren't 8-bit games, of course. They are like 64-bit coded, but the graphics are 8-bit style. Doing that again. Just for you, Jamie.
Yeah.
There's a kind of real retro renaissance about them. He loves them. He's doing there's oh god, what's it called? Something about Isaac. It's a very biblically themed kind of game, weirdly enough, which is kind of like these 8-bit graphics. But yeah, very strange. Okay. Any other thoughts, Jamie or Gary, on streaming before we say adieu to our loyal listeners and viewers tonight?
No, I just really enjoy it. I hope people seem to as well. People seem to be happy to listen to other people ranting about all sorts of strange stuff. And, it's just a bit of a release for everyone, I think. Just, it's good fun. It's just good fun building that community.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like Airfix and Chill on a Monday is very much what I see as like my model club. We're going because we're a like-minded group of people to talk about things, but we will probably end up talking about this stuff. And it's really, you're seeing your regular friends, you're chatting about stuff with them. It's the modeling equivalent to going to the pub, as we all used to back in the day. I don't think people even do that anymore, do they? So for me, it's very much that kind of social side, and that's kind of what I wanted this midweek meet to be, is that kind of melting pot of just getting people coming in, talking about modeling themed central issues, and then going off wherever we go, whether it's throwing things into Mars at meters per second or old style computing.
Yeah.
How about you, Jamie? What are your final thoughts?
Well, it's a bit of a lifeline for me out here because there is no modelling scene out here, and the internet and streaming and things like that is just a way for me to connect because I can't do it any other way. So I kind of, and I love talking about models and the hobby and, and going down rabbit holes and, it's just as good as sticking bits of plastic together, frankly. And I rely on it, bottom line. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I started up my channel was to try and get something like that going and, put something out there and get interaction back, albeit, even if it's typed. It's just a way of me sort of trying to stay connected with the wider hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the only caveat I would put on all of that is don't do 24 hours of streaming. Try and build a single model in it. Really. And on that bombshell, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in tonight and spending the last couple of hours with us. Thank you very much. I will link in Gary and Jamie's channels, as always, into the video afterwards. Gary, Jamie, thank you very much for joining me. And for the rest of you, we will see you all again next time with whoever manages to turn up on a Wednesday, middle of the week. With that, thanks, everybody. See you next time.
See you soon.
Thanks, Scott.